Welcome to Centerpoint Church. My name is Mary, and we're so glad you're here. No matter where you're from, you always belong here at Centerpoint. We're so excited to start our new series called The Jesus Way, and we're going to take a look at the life of Jesus and how, amongst many other options in the world, Jesus and his options are always so much better. If you're interested in connecting further with us, just text here to 604-265-5670. To join us in person, we meet on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock at the Chief Sepass Theater in Fort Langley, and we would absolutely love to see you there on a Sunday morning. And for more information about our church or other information you might have about our church, just visit our website at thisiscenterpoint.org. Here's Josh with our new sermon series, The Jesus Way.
We're actually doing something called the 40. And starting March 1st, we're doing something we haven't done before as a church, but we want to encourage everybody to get on board with it. And you'll see it behind me. It's the 40. It's just 40 days. And for many people, whether you're new to faith or you've been a part of maybe a church for a long time or been between, what we're encouraging people to do for 40 days, not just because it's my birthday number, okay? But you like that segue. But the 40 days is an opportunity for us to develop a habit. And for many people, reading the Bible or prayer or asking questions about the Bible can be challenging. And so what we're doing is making something accessible for everybody, and we're hoping to do it together as a church. And so this is something you can do individually, and we'll talk about it each week. And but there's a plan that you can go online and you can sign up, and we've made it so easy. Here's how easy we've made it. You can get daily emails right in your inbox. All you got to do is sign up, and then once it's done, then we'll send you an email every single day for the rest of the year. No, I'm kidding. But it's only going to be for 40 days that you sign up for, and an email in your inbox. We're going to have a blog on our website that you can comment on every day and dialogue if you would like to do that. You don't have to, but if you'd like to. Or we're going to have physical copies. And so what we're asking our church to do is for 40 days to commit to this. It's very easy. It's about 5 minutes max time. It can be shorter than that if you're a speed reader or you don't want contemplation, but we say take your time, right, thinking through it, but we want to make it as easy and accessible as possible. But the biggest thing is we're looking for 100% participation. So if that's something, mark your calendar. March 1st is coming. Not only because The Mandalorian is hitting your Disney Plus subscription, but as well as the 40-day plan, which is better, okay? All right. So last week we started off a new series called The Way of Jesus, and we talked about the way of the wilderness. And today we're going to be talking about the way of the table. Now, tables are not necessarily the most exciting things, right? Some people like the wooden table, or the more glass top and iron cast bottom. But the table itself is just a fairly basic item. But it reflects so much about who we are. Because it's a place where we laugh together, where we cry together, where we eat delicious food, or sometimes burnt food. It's the times that we try to work through the chaos, or it's times that we try and understand one another. It happens at a table. And when anybody kind of peruses the pages of the Old and the New Testament found in the Bible, they can find this idea, the illustration of the table. It's everywhere. As a matter of fact, all through the life of Jesus, we see this table. We see it over and over and over again that people are welcomed to the table. When we, many, many moons ago, about a decade ago, Destiny and I, we set out with a few people to plant a church. And it's not for the faint of heart, but it involves a lot of your time, of your energy, resources. But what people don't know about the story is that every Saturday morning, we would gather for waffles. Now, we're not talking about just average waffles. Like, we don't leave the yolk in the egg. You take it out because you only want the white part. And then you fluff up that white, right? The egg whites. And then when you throw it in, the waffle gets a little bit fluffier. And then you got to make sure that you have your strawberries, right? Whipping cream, maybe your brown sugar person, Any jam waffle people in here? No, I didn't think so. What about syrup waffle people? Okay. I like my fruits on the waffle, right? But we'd sit down and we'd gather. And we'd talk about life. And we'd talk about what was happening in our stories. And we'd sit and we'd dream about the future. And what's fascinating, and people don't really think about this all that much, but people think about rows in the church and not circles. And it's in these circles, both at Center Point Church and Fraser Point and Center Church. We sat in circles and developed relationships. And there was something about the table that was central to the story. And so too in the story of Jesus, we find his hospitality littered throughout the 4 books that record his life: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the New Testament. Stories of him welcoming, him inviting. It's where the most powerful sat with Jesus. It was the least likely that sat with Jesus. It was where he directed and corrected. It was where he encouraged. It was where he taught his most valuable lesson on the last night of his life. He sat at a table with his disciples. And we're going to look at a story today that I think resonates with the heartbeat of our church. And if you're ever wondering, what is Center Point Church about? What is the heartbeat of Center Point Church? Why do we exist? Well, I believe this story sums it up. It's why we do Sunday mornings the way that we do. It's why maybe it's a bit darker in the seats than normal. It's why we're extremely intentional about our welcoming at the front doors. It's why it matters that your kids are in safe environments. It's why we keep opening our homes to people in small groups. It's why we keep doing community outreach events and why we do give help and we do get help. It's why we do Be Rich every year. The reason we do this, the heartbeat, is around this story. And it's a story of Matthew. He's also known as Levi. Sometimes Jesus changes people's names. He does this with Peter. Most people know Peter as in the New Testament, but he originally started, his parents called him Simon, which meant reed. But Jesus changed his name to Peter because he was going to be the rock. And so we see this, Matthew and Levi, we see it in the text, but something incredible happens in Levi's life, and it leads to a table. So why don't we look at that story today, and let's jump into it. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, that's where we're going to start. Jesus is having dinner at Matthew's house. That might not sound extraordinary. It might not sound like something life-changing, but make no mistake, it actually was. And in another book in the New Testament, the same story is recorded. It's just recorded a slightly different way, and it gives a little bit more detail. And it's written by a man named Luke. He's a doctor, and he tells us why there is a party at Matthew's house. So Jesus went and saw a tax collector. This is happening before the party, by the name of Levi. There it is, Matthew, Levi, you with me? Okay. Sitting at his tax booth. Now, I just want to give some context here because Matthew is a tax collector, okay? That's why he's at the tax booth. And tax collectors took money from Jewish people, and they were Jewish themselves. They were hired by the Romans. Now, I just would say it like this, not that it's happening here, okay, so you don't need to look around all suspicious, but it would be as if somebody from Center Point Church came to your house to collect taxes, and then you had to sit beside them in the service, and they taxed you more than they should have, right? And you're like, does that happen at Center Point? It doesn't happen. It's an illustration, okay? But that's how people felt about the tax collector. And so he's sitting in his tax collecting booth. He's working for the Romans against the Jews. There's a Roman occupation. The people are under this occupation are not allowed to always worship the way that they want. There's limitations, that there's a heavy tax. More than that, there's also the fact that if you step out of line against Caesar, that you could potentially lose your life. It's not good. And the tax collectors work on behalf of that system. And so Jesus goes to the tax booth to talk to Levi, also known as Matthew, and he's sitting at the tax booth and he says these words, "Follow me." And I love this because Jesus isn't about saying, "Obey me." That's not the first words that Jesus says to people that he interacts with. He leans in and he says, this is an invitation to follow me. It's an invitation. It's an active invitation to take the next step. You see, some of us think that it's about behavior modification. It's about us leaning in and believing correctly. And so we get lost in this territory of like rules and regulations rather than walking in step with Jesus. And Jesus' invitation is not right away, obey me. It's follow me. And these are important words because there was this segment of people called rabbis. And see, rabbis asked people to follow them, and they were the religious elites. And they chose people that were highest in the educational system, that showed promise with religious scholarship, that showed promise of obedience, that could fall in line, and Matthew was not that character. Now, I don't know how you grew up. I didn't grow up as one of those characters. Maybe God played a trick on me. I ended up as a pastor. But I didn't think that this would be where my life would lead. And many people I know in their stories were on a different path, and then they had this catalytic moment where they encountered something different in their life, where Jesus intervened in some way. And so too, Matthew has no right to follow a rabbi. He's chosen a path against Jewish traditions. He's against the people. And so this is radical. Jesus is upending the religious system. And Jesus said to him, look at these next words. And Levi got up, left everything, and followed him. Then Levi held a great banquet for Jesus at his house, and a large crowd of tax collectors and others were eating with them. So when we go back to the Matthew verse, let's jump there. Back to Matthew. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, it's a follow party. They're celebrating that Matthew was chosen by Jesus. So they're partying. I kind of like that. See, I was talking to somebody recently, and their friends are nervous that because they follow Jesus, they're going to be less fun. I'm just going to give a little bit of insight here. If we can be innovative in the tech world, if we can be innovative with sports equipment and with self-driving cars, can we be innovative with fun too? Maybe a party doesn't have to look the same. Maybe it takes a little bit of innovation. But make no mistake, Jesus found himself at parties. He was not a killjoy. Maybe that's your takeaway from the Sunday. Let's hope not. But, all right. We skipped a few. Can we go back? While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house. So while Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. And we see Jesus interacting with those that are least likely. This is important because when we think about what church is for and what it's about and who's welcome here, many people think is for the people that already believe. And now it's not that isn't true, but that's just part of the story. And as a matter of fact, if you wonder, if you've asked the question, well, what is Centerpoint Church about? What are the marching orders and what is the direction that Jesus gives us? Well, he lays it out for us. He's saying that those that might fall in the other category should be the focus of the church as well. That those that would feel like this isn't a place, that's not a place for them, should feel welcome because they felt welcome to be around Jesus. That those that might not end up around our tables, maybe they should end up around our tables. Maybe they should have an invitation. Because as we look at the story and we look at the life of Jesus, it seems to reflect that. But then Jesus is hanging out with sinners, and all of a sudden the religious people get nervous. Because that's what religious people do. They get nervous, right? Jesus isn't afraid to be associated. But all of a sudden, some people walk by. Look at this. And the Pharisees, where'd they come from? I mean, Jesus gets an invite to Matthew's house, and somehow the religious people show up. Word got out. There's a party. Jesus is at it. The religious people show up. And guess what? They have something to say. Okay, what do they say? Why does this teacher, they ask his disciples, eat with tax collectors and sinners? I mean, come on. What's he doing? We don't do that. You see, we're clean. We got it together. Why would we associate with those that don't? And look at the next verse. I love this. On hearing this, Jesus overhears it. Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick." And then he says one of the most offensive lines, and here's why it's offensive. These Pharisees have spent their whole life educating themselves on religious laws. They've spent their whole lives on piety and on separation to reveal God's holiness to the people by being separate from the people. And then God sends his son Jesus to bring God back in connection with people, and they can't figure it out. And look what Jesus says, "But go and learn." They're like, we spent our whole life learning, but go and learn what this means. In other words, you might think you have it all figured out, but there's more. Look what he says next. "I desire mercy, not sacrifice." What does this mean? I have not come to call the righteous, the ones that have it all figured out, the ones that put me in a box, the ones that have reduced religion to a Sunday morning experience or something in a belief system. No, I have come to call those that know they don't have it all together. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. It's a prerequisite to following Jesus, is the fact that we don't have it all together. And the beauty of the table is it's an invitation for all people to come to the table. So I thought I'd do an illustration. You see, what I see and I hear and I read online is people think that what I need to do is I need to clean myself up, I need to prepare myself, I need to get my stuff together, and then once I do that, then I can pursue God, or then I can finally go to church, or then I can accept the invitation, but I got to get my house in order first. And that might be something that makes sense or lands with you, but it's actually not the way of the table. You see, because this is the story, and the story of Jesus is that Jesus puts the chairs out for us, and my notes are a little disheveled, so he prepares the table for you. And then on the night before Jesus died, he said around a table that I'm going to show you what it means to sit with me. I'm going to show you what the invitation means to follow me. It's not about you preparing for me. It's about me preparing for you. It's about me doing the work. And so Jesus puts out the chairs. He prepares the meal. And now we're going to go into a little bit of metaphor, so I hope you can follow me. But what he prepares is his grace for you. In advance, forgiveness is for you. He gives you mercy because there's things in our life that we didn't just make mistakes, we actually did intentional mistakes. So what are intentional mistakes called? We sin. And he says, hey, but I got forgiveness given to you in advance. It's called my mercy. And you know what else he prepares at the table? He prepares rest. Because you see, we work, and we feel like we have to work to earn our identity. He says, no, you can rest in who I've made you to be. You see, he prepares the table for us, and we think this, you know what, I got to get my life together for God to see me or for God to know that I'm serious. And what he does is he sits, he prepares a table, and he says, come, sit down. Oh, and we sit. And he's like, eat. I've prepared everything for you. You know what I've done? I just want you to come sit and to be with me. And what many people miss is that God isn't here to come point out all of our flaws. He knows you have flaws. What God doesn't come to do is make you feel worse about your life. He knows that it's already difficult, and he comes to encourage you. He knows how hard you've been working. He knows those parts of your life that you wish you could change. He knows how your relationships didn't go the way that you wanted and you wish that they had. And so he says, I know that you're weary. I know that you've been trying. But why don't you just sit with me? In the same way that the tax collector sits with Jesus, he says, hey, come to this table that I prepared for you. In one of the most popular Psalms, in Psalm 23, it says that Jesus prepares a table for us in the presence of our enemies, in Psalm 23, verse 5. And what he's saying there is not that you prepare a table for God, that he prepares it for you. At the very last book of the Bible, in the book of Revelation, filled with lots of imagery, a lot of people get confused. One thing is clear, that Jesus, he sets a table for us. And he says, come and sit. The reality is that many people just don't sit at the table. And the invitation still stands. And Jesus keeps inviting us. Hey, I prepared all this for you. I prepared my grace, prepared my mercy. I prepared my truth and my justice. I've given you rest. I got all you need. You just need to sit. And the table is inclusive to all people, but exclusive through the person of Jesus. And often it's not us sitting and going, I need grace. It's just us sitting with Jesus and we receive those things. But here's what Christians believe about the table or about his life, is that it's a theory. And N.T. Wright talks about the table is not just that Jesus' life and what he gives us is not just a theory, but he offers us a meal. And on the night before Jesus dies, he breaks bread, he shares wine, and he says, every time you do this, remember all that I have prepared for you. In your weariness, in your striving, in your wishing to be more, in your mistaking, in your intentionality of maybe hurting other people or holding on to resentment, in all of that, just come and sit at the table. I have something to offer you. And the beauty of it is the invitation is for all people. So if you ask, why do we exist at Center Point Church? It's that people would know that they are welcome to the table and receive all that Jesus has to offer them. It's not another religious option. It's a relationship to receive what Jesus has done for us, to sit at the table and to be reminded of the goodness that we sang about, of God. All our life, he's been faithful. All our life, he's been good. But the question is, have you accepted the invitation to sit? Some of us say, it's too much, it's too big. I've done too much wrong. But the invitation still stands. I recently got an invitation to walk through somebody's workplace. Now, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but sometimes with being a pastor, you get to spaces in people's lives and that you never thought you'd really be. And I was walking through this office and meeting people, and I'm like, how did I get here? I kept asking myself, like, why? I don't have permission to be here. How did I get here? And the reality is that somebody extended an invitation to me, and as a result of their authority, I got in. And I was like, that's pretty sweet. And so too, the invitation for you stands at the table. And for those of you that are followers of Jesus, our marching orders is to open our tables as well. To create spaces at our weekend services and in our kids' environments and in our youth environments for people to come and sit and to receive. To open up the homes in our small groups and in our houses to our neighbors and those who might be going through difficult times. That they would experience the hospitality that Jesus has extended to us. And so a question remains. And as we think about the way of the table, and as if Jesus invites us into this new way, this place of hospitality and grace and mercy, this place that's so generous and full of compassion. If we're to live out this message for people that are followers of Jesus, now if you're not a follower of Jesus, you get off the hook a little bit. But if you are a follower of Jesus, there's a question, and this is the question that remains, is who's at your table? Who's at your table? In the same way that Jesus has extended the invitation to us, who are we extending the invitation to? Because I know that I wouldn't be here if somebody didn't invite me. I know that I wouldn't experience the table and all that Jesus has to offer if I didn't have an invitation to sit. So who's at your table? Who's the one that makes you a little uncomfortable? Expend a little bit more grace, patience. Maybe they say a couple things that you're like, I'm not so sure about that. The place that makes you think, oh yeah, there was a time that I was there too. Because you see, we all got an invitation, and we all fell short, and Jesus welcomed us to the table. The question is, who's at yours? And if we're going to be a church that makes a difference in our community, it starts at the table. It starts with an invitation. Maybe it's an invitation to a party, or maybe it's an invitation to your home. It's an invitation to coffee. Or maybe you're talking to that neighbor, and it's just not passing up the opportunity to listen for a few extra moments. The question is, who's at your table? And for those of you that are followers of Jesus, who are you inviting to experience the same thing that you have experienced, the way of the table that Jesus has extended to us? And if you haven't accepted the invitation to follow Jesus, I want you to know today that Jesus has done all the heavy lifting. If you're seeking God and you're wondering, do I have to clean myself up? Do I have to put myself all back together? I want you to know today that He cares for you. He's done the heavy lifting. He's prepared the table, and He's extended the invitation. And at any time, when you're ready, whether here or somewhere else, the invitation to follow Him is always on the table. The table is set and prepared for you, that at any time you can sit and you can receive what Jesus has given to you. If you need forgiveness, it's available to you. If you need grace, it's available. If you need rest, it's available. If you need a fresh start, it's available. If you need healing for a mended heart after a difficult relationship, maybe it's a separation, maybe it's a divorce, there's comfort. He doesn't reject, He doesn't push away. It's an invitation to receive. And it's invitation for everybody. In the same way that He invites the tax collector and the notorious sinners, He invites us all to the table. And will you and will I accept that invitation? And it's not just a one-time thing. It's a daily invitation to sit And this is why we created the 40, because some don't know how to sit and to be with Jesus, so we created a tool just to be able to sit and to be. But today in this space, the invitation stands to sit and to be with Jesus. Will you be with him? He's not going to force you. He's not going to wrestle you onto the chair. Lightning might strike. No, I'm kidding. I hear that one a lot. But I think rather than the lightning striking, it's more like comfort and a welcoming, like a father seeing his daughter or son come home. And that's what I hope for you today, that you experience all that God has prepared for you. Let's pray today. God, thank you so much. I thank you that you invite us all to your mercy and to your grace. Nobody deserves it, God, but you give it because you love your people. You see what's happening in people's lives, and God, you want to be there and to guide them and encourage them. Maybe even to correct and direct them. Always a loving Father. Always welcoming, always inviting. And God, help us to be a church that invites people to our table, to our spaces, that in the same way you've invited us, help us to be a people that leans into inviting others into our homes, to our church, into connection with you. God, today, help us to receive what we need to receive, to put aside that which weighs us down and give it to you. And help us to know that you're near and you're close and you care. God, we thank you that you came not for the perfect, but the imperfect. God, we thank you for that. We thank you for moments like this where we can sit and we can be together. And God, we ask that as we head into the week that you encourage us, we pray. Thank you for all you blessed us with, God. Amen. If you want to get more connected, you want to talk any further, you totally can. After the service, we've got a New Here banner, or I'm available, other leaders are available. I'm going to invite Christian back up to the stage. I hope you have an amazing week. If you're not connected, get connected. We'd love to help you do that. So have an amazing week, everybody. Christian, why don't you come up and finish us out?